Good evening. I'm Larry Skolnick, the President and CEO of the Memphis Jewish Community Center. On behalf of the Wendy and Avron B. Fogelman Jewish Family Service, it is my pleasure to welcome you to tonight's program. During these unprecedented times, FJFS wants to be of service to you, and what better way than providing information and answering questions to help us all navigate the weeks ahead. Before I introduce tonight's speaker and program, I want to take just a moment to explain how tonight's program will work. All of your connections have been muted to minimize any background noise or disturbances. Our speaker will be presenting the topic of how to socially distance yourself without socially isolating yourself for about 20 to 30 minutes. After that, we will have time for questions and answers. If you would please type any questions that you have into the chat section provided here on Zoom, I will go through the questions and present them to our speaker. Please feel free to enter your questions as you think of them, and we will then begin answering those questions at the end of the formal presentation. If you are having trouble with the audio here on Zoom, please adjust the speaker settings on your computer and make sure that audio is enabled. I also want to remind everyone that Fogelman Jewish Family Service is a resource to all of you, and we are here to assist you in any way possible during the coronavirus pandemic and at all other times. If there is anything that we can do to assist you or connect you with needed services, a member of the FJFS team can be reached at 901-471-9170, Monday through Friday from 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. It is now my pleasure to introduce Judy Bookman, a licensed clinical social worker. Currently, she is the CEO of Judy Bookman Workplace Behavior Consulting, which she started after over 12 years as the Assistant Director for Concern EAP, a division of Baptist Memorial Healthcare Corporation. Judy has a long history of working with children and families with serious mental health needs, including serving as the Intake Director and Director of the Crisis Response Team at Lakeside Hospital, the Administrator of Adolescent Services at Lakeside Hospital, and the Director of Professional Services for Family Services of the Mid-South. In addition, Judy spends a lot of time mentoring and supervising private practice mental health professionals in the community as well as other parts of the United States. Because of her unique and varied background, she also presents over 200 workshops annually for area businesses, government entities, and educational institutions, as well as at local and regional conferences. Please join me in welcoming Judy Bookman.
Thank you, Larry. Good evening, everyone. Thanks for joining us this evening. We're together this evening, obviously, because these are some rather different times than I think any of us has ever been through. So tonight we're going to focus on social connections, social distancing, and avoiding social isolation. We have a saying in mental health that says there are no happy hermits. Even though people may be introverted, we're not meant to be alone and we're not meant to be loners. That doesn't mean that we all have to be coupled, we all have to be in intense relationships, but we do need to have human interactions with other people, even if it's seeing somebody face to face in the checkout line at Kroger and saying, "How are you doing today?" Those are the things that are going away very quickly in the last couple of weeks and may continue for quite a while. So we're going to talk about that a little bit. People are asking me, is isolation bad for us? The reality is it's good for the pandemic in terms of hopefully controlling the infection. What it is not good for is our social needs. And what we do know about isolation in limited numbers is that it does play a role in our physical health. Unfortunately, when we are alone and don't have human contact, our physical health often suffers. We also know that it has something to do with our mental health needs because, as I say, we are social beings and we need to have that interaction with other folks. It also interferes with our cognitive health, and there are a lot of studies that back that up in terms of our not being able to focus as much, to retain as much information, and to learn new skills when we are acting on our own. Before we really get to the crux of the social piece of this, I want to talk a little bit about attitudes and behaviors, because I believe that our attitudes are really the driving force behind how we seek out companionship, no matter whether it is virtual companionship or companionship in a physical sense. That is, I'm going to go into the brain a little bit. The brain is really what I call master control, because what we think up here is like a giant echo chamber, and it really resonates with how we feel about what we are doing or whether we do things or not. If I feed my brain misery, I'm going to get misery, and I'm going to feel that the situation, whatever it is going to be unbearable. On the other hand, if I feed my brain gratitude for the things that are going well and that are positive, I'm going to get a situation where life is good or it's not quite that bad. The other thing is, it's important to stay ahead of feelings and to recognize that if we think we're not going to do so well in this kind of in the kinds of settings that we're now being exposed to, in terms of being on our own or being with a limited number of family and friends, one of the things that we need to recognize is that we need to stay ahead of that curve. In other words, just as in any kind of situation, you don't wait until you hit rock bottom if you know you're going down the slope. So it's important to go ahead and seek out situations where we can interact with folks. This is even more important if you already have experienced not only mental health issues in the past, but if you've gone through a recent trauma, whether it's a crisis of some kind, whether it is financial, whether it is an illness or an illness of a loved one, and certainly if you've experienced any recent losses. When we talk about loss, I always define that as at least a 2-year period. So it doesn't mean that you lost a loved one in the last couple of weeks. It's really a 24-month cycle that most of us look at when we're talking about loss. So these are some things that I think we have to sort of couch the conversation in. Also, I think it's important when we talk about attitudes and about behaviors is to focus on the positive. Look at what we have control over and what we don't have control over. What are you going to focus on? Well, obviously you want to focus on the things that you do have control over, because the things you don't have control over, you can't do anything about anyway. And I think that worry is often just drives us into further decline when we get frustrated, when we don't have control. So we can focus on what we do have control over. Also, focusing on the fact that although we don't know when the end of this kind of an isolating pattern is going to be, we do know that it's not going to be permanent. So I think it's important to continue to tell ourselves in this giant echo chamber that whatever is going on is really temporary. It is time limited, and this is not going to be our forever plan. We are all in the same boat, and you may hear me say that a number of times. This is not anything that only I am experiencing. It's not anything that only you are experiencing. It's really, at this point in time, it has become a human condition. So we're all in this together. For myself, and I think for other people, when I talk to them, I make a big deal about having what we call an attitude of gratitude. Being grateful for things that we do have in our lives, friends, loved ones, a roof over our heads, things that we might take for granted on a daily basis, but making, not only being grateful for them, but making a sort of a big deal about it, whether it's the cardinal that's outside on the ground today, whether it is the spring rain we experienced a little bit earlier today, but also whether it's putting cinnamon on your oatmeal or whatever that may be, things that we take for granted, we now have a little bit more time to appreciate, and I think that's important. So I think that the attitudes that we set then go into play when we're talking about social connections. And I'm going to hit on some key points about that. One is about not only maintaining the social connections we do have, but also perhaps increasing those social connections at the moment when we actually have more time to appreciate and to be able to have some more relationships. Now, they're not going to be the traditional kind where we're going to go out to dinner, but they're still going to be relationships. Another thing I think we need to focus on is also how we need to stay as active as we can, because if we are not active in terms of our spirits, we're not going to be good at establishing and maintaining social relationships anyway. Another thing I think we have to talk about is keeping structure in our lives, whether that is making phone calls to other people, but having a sense of structure and not doing a free fall every day and saying, I don't know what I'm going to do today. I'm just filling up time or counting the days until this piece of my life is over. And then we're going to talk about help and what help looks like in these times. So, social contacts. I think we've already established how important those are, regardless of the numbers. We don't have to have 25 best friends, but we do need to have at least 2 or 3 folks that we are interested in maintaining contact with and who are interested in maintaining contact with us. People ask me all the time about texting. We've become a texting generation, even for those of us who weren't born texting. Texting has become a way of life, and I think one of the advantages is it does give us an opportunity to connect with people when we may not be able to talk with them directly. Same for emails, and also we maintain contacts through Facebook and other social media platforms. I'm going to tell you that all that is better than nothing, but if we have choices, I'm going to say pick up the phone. We still have telephones. Listen to somebody's voice, hear those voice inflections. What limits us with emails and with text is that it's the printed word. What we get out of the print is we see the words, but we read the emotions into it that we are feeling or that we assume the other person is feeling. When we're really trying to establish a connection with somebody and establish that contact to avoid isolation, we want to hear those voice inflections. Even better would be if we could Skype and FaceTime, because what we know with that is you can also see facial expressions. That adds more richness to the potpourri of establishing and maintaining these social connections. When I talk about social connections, by the way, I'm obviously talking about family members, either extended or immediate family members that you're not living with. And we're talking about your kinship networks, your friendship networks, folks in the community that you may see working out in the fitness area, for example. And you go like, this is nuts not being able to see her. I see her 4 times a week. So you reach out to those kinds of folks because there's no need not to, and it's good for us to do it. Also, I think we have to take advantage of links on the websites that we frequent. So whether it's your synagogue's website, whether it's the JCC website, JCP, whatever that is, follow some of those links so that you can maintain that social contact. It's important, as we've already said, for your physical health. It's important for your mental health, and it's important for you to maintain cognitive stability as much as you can. So those are my suggestions in terms of how we maintain social connectedness. Is there a reason to isolate physically? I think that's already been established that we do need to isolate physically because the virus, at this point, there are too many unknowns, but what we do know is frightening enough. So we need to follow the established CDC guidelines and stay in touch with folks because that's what we do. We stay in touch with people, not just for them, but also for us. When it comes to being as physically active as possible, again, this feeds into those social connections. I'm gonna tell you that we need to move our bodies. Why do I say that? If you're in a down spot and you need to connect with those folks socially, when you don't move, endorphins go away and we feel worse. So one of the reasons I'm bringing up physical activity, whether you call it exercise or just getting up and walking around your house or around the block, is because it is so important for stabilizing and improving our moods. What else is important? Well, obviously breathing. And I know that sounds a little strange. Well, Judy, if we're here, we're breathing. But when we breathe in the right way, we're controlling our stress level. We are opening ourselves up to feeling better and to being able to enjoy life at a higher level. Sometimes I talk about what I call relaxation rituals, and a lot of us do these and don't call them that. But many of us have rituals that we establish either when we get up in the morning, certainly when we go to bed at night, whether it's having a shower, a bubble bath. But those kinds of things you want to maintain, A, because it relaxes us, it's a part of a routine, and we need to continue to do that. So, for example, in the morning, if you have 2 cups of tea and you already know that that's a part of your ritual, this is not necessarily a time for you to say, well, I'm giving up tea. So you want to maintain that stability, and you want to have that sense of gratitude that those parts of your life are able to stay the same, as are the relationships in our lives when we're establishing those and maintaining them. Other relaxation rituals can be as simple as simply putting your feet up, when many of us during the course of our regular lives are saying we don't have time to think. This is a time that we actually can spend a little bit of time thinking, reflecting on the things we may have done in the past, and looking forward to things that we actually want to do in the future. And I think that's really important for having something to talk about with our friends and loved ones, but also in terms of having that really the luxury of being able to reflect on certain things. Meditation. I know that we're going like everybody says to meditate. Here's the good news about the internet. There's so many apps and so many opportunities for us to learn this, and it's really a new skill. It sounds a little bit touchy-feely to some of us who don't go into the touchy-feely mode of life very often, but the reality is we've got a lot of information that tells us that when people meditate, when we learn to meditate, a lot of good things happen. I'm not going to tell you that you're going to win the lottery if you meditate, but you're going to actually feel so much better and calmer. Many of us in the course of our daily lives, we talk about calm and we go like, what's calm? So this is going to be our opportunity to learn a new skill that we're going to be able to carry forward when this part of our lives is over. So meditating, and I'm going to take it to its next level and talk about prayer. If we find prayer helpful to us, this is a good time for us to reach out, either in our own way, each in his own way, but certainly to pray, whether it is individually or whether it is one of the prayer groups that have been established online in this time, but to be able to say, you know, these are the things that are important to me. These are the things that are sustaining me, and I want to do this and continue to do it. So I don't think we can take any of these things for granted. And I also don't think we ought to blow something off that may not be, that we just go like, well, that doesn't sound like me. This is a time for us to say, well, it may not sound like me, but these are unusual times. Try something out. If you don't like it after a few times, go like, okay, I'm not going to do it anymore. But by doing that, we're also establishing some more social connections that will help us as we expand our networks of friends and family and things that we have in common. Another thing is that we need to really modify and be mindful of things. How many of us are washing our hands at least 20 times a day now? I'm going to raise my hand. So when we wash our hands, we can be mindful of the soap. We can be mindful of the feeling of the water, whether it's warm, whether we like it cool, whatever, and the opportunity to do that. One of the nice things about Judaism is it actually has already established hand washing as a ritual, perhaps not in the form that we're currently doing it, but it certainly is something that we can build on. So I want to mention that for all of us, but being mindful of little things and big things and being able to be grateful for those all feed into our connectedness with each other. Stress management, I know we're going to have a segment on that in a couple of days, but I do want to say that a lot of folks are telling me they're stressed out right now when they watch the news, and the news obviously is available these days 24/7. We need to be informed. Information, accurate information, is extremely important right now. But when we are overwhelmed by that information and it makes us feel so much worse and we feel that the situation is so dire that we can't face it, it's time to turn off the news. It's time to change our focus to some of the folks in our lives that we care about and turn off the TV. We're all able to do that. You just turn off the TV. You hit the remote, you turn off the power, focus on the people in your life that matter, and pull away from the TV. Go back to the information you need when you need it. We can't put our heads in the sand about this, but we do need to be mindful that sometimes too much information is simply overwhelming for us in these times. If it sends us into a panic and we're saturated with news, that's our clue that we need to simply stop it. I think we have to be reasonable in our behavior. I think that when we take unnecessary risks at this point, we simply drive ourselves into a deeper pit and we distance ourselves from other folks when we're seeking comfort and responses from other folks in that sense of connectedness that we all need right now. I also think this is something that I'm working on, and I'm calling it. It may be a bestseller, so I hate to give it away, but I'll go ahead and tell you. I'm keeping a list of how I'm surviving the corona quarantine. So you might want to do that too, and we'll all compare notes and see, because I think there are going to be some unique things that come out of it. I want to talk a little bit about structure. We've known for a long time in mental health, for children, for adolescents, and for adults, that maintaining a sense of structure is important. Having a time that we pretty much know we're going to wake up in the morning, having that morning routine, and a routine that continues through the day, whether it involves exercise, whether it involves studying a particular book, or whatever it is that we do, structure is important. It's important so much now to have a schedule and not to do what I call a free fall for this. So having a structure when you get up, perhaps planning the night before, here's what I'm planning to have for breakfast, here's the menu, whatever that is, and also planning for pleasurable experiences, whatever those may be. For example, I just mentioned menus because I just love to eat. But game night, or if you're going to watch a foreign movie, it's not just a foreign movie, you're actually having a foreign film festival. So I think that the way we picture frame moments becomes increasingly important. I also think the way we picture frame our relationships become important. And I think if we are going to be mindful about connecting with folks and establishing and maintaining these social connections, that one of the things that we have to do is recognize that we're all human beings in this. I don't know about you, but I may have a few faults myself. So one of the things that we need to look at is practicing forgiveness and just loving the things about the folks, enjoying the people that we do connect with. Because at the end of the day, enjoyment is really what connecting is about. I will tell you that I have a cousin who's in her 90s, and she called me yesterday, and she said, I just wanted to call and check on you. Now, I know how this made me feel, but I also said, why didn't I pick up the phone and call her first? But it is so, she knows the value of connecting with folks. She's very sociable, very social, and she's isolating like right now, as she should at her age. And one of the things that is so special to me about her is her ability to continue to connect, even though she's physically isolating herself with the utmost caution. So I think we have to take a lesson from my cousin and recognize how important that is for all of us, because if somebody in her 90s can do that, I think that most of us who are in our 80s, 70s, and younger probably can find time to make those connections on a daily basis also. I'm going to go back a little bit to planning. Remember all the things that we've said in the last 20 years about, gee, I'd love to do that, but I don't have time. I'll get to that one day. Here's the silver lining in this cloud. A lot of us have more time now to do these things. So if you want to reorganize the photo album, if you want to get rid of some of the old things that may be at the back of the closet, and you have the courage to do that, then I think this is a great time to plan those and to build those into your weekly schedule, so that you know that you've got certain things. You're going to still have tasks. You're going to still have at least do one thing you look forward to every day, and needs to make in contact with other people who matter to you. The other thing I want to emphasize before we open it up to discussion and questions is that we need to give help, folks. There are people that need us, and there are people that need us, and we need people. So I say give help, get help. Some of us are better at one of those than the other, but the reality is all of us who are able to give help also have need to get help as well. That's one of the things about what I call the helpers in our community, and that is they're getting back probably more than they're giving. So everybody gets something when we're in a helping kind of a relationship. That phone call from somebody that you provide tomorrow, it may be the very thing that lets somebody, there's going to be light at the end of the tunnel, and even if this goes on for a while, I just spoke to somebody that really seemed to care and who understands that this is tough for all of us. or who appreciates that spring is happening outside the window. So I think these kinds of things are extremely important. I'm going to have to quote Rodgers and Hammerstein on this because I can't help myself, but one of the lyrics from The Sound of Music is, "Love isn't love till you give it away." Well, that applies to help. When we help somebody, it comes back at us and we feel so good about it. And sometimes we don't know about that until quite a while later, that we've actually made a difference. But when we have purpose, when we're doing worthwhile work, whether it is simply making that phone call, picking up FaceTime, or doing Skype with somebody, or texting if that's your preference, how important that is, you can't underestimate. But again, I'm going to say it's important for the person you call, but it may be more important for you as the caller. We all need each other, and I think that's what makes us a community. And being able to say, reaching out to somebody and needing somebody to reach out to us is not a sign of weakness. It's a sound of human need, and that's who we all are. So on that note, I hope I've covered what it is that we wanted to talk about this evening. I'm going to open it up.
Okay, thank you very much, Judy. I just want to remind everybody, if you have questions, if you scroll your mouse over the video screen at the very bottom, you'll see an icon that says chat. And if you click on that, on the right side of your screen will be a Zoom group chat where you can type a message to me in, and then I can send your question on to Judy. So Judy, I do have one question that was sent to me. Earlier in your presentation, you talked about being able to recognize when you begin to go down a slope before you sort of hit a point where you're in a really bad place. And so the question is, at a time like this, when obviously people are stressed out and we're all on edge, what is normal, and how do you know when you start to hit that slope?
Okay, that's a very good question. Normal is really defined by each of us as normal. Although I will tell you that there are some people that may suffer from depression and that's normal for them, but I say that's not okay. I would like to think that everybody can feel better. If they don't feel good now, there's got to be a better somewhere, or a better now, or in the near future. I think that what we look at is, do I not want to get out of bed at all today? Am I not sleeping, or am I sleeping all the time? Am I pervasively sad? Am I frustrated that I'm not worthy of living a good life, or of performing activities of daily living? I think those kinds of things, those certainly are my indicators when things aren't going well, not just for other people, but for myself. When we isolate, for those of us who have a more friendly nature, and I'm going like, I don't want to talk to anybody. And I may take it all the way to the depths and say, I don't ever want to talk to anybody again. Then I know I'm headed down a very steep slope. So I think we have to take a look at where we usually function, at least at this point, and see where it's going to dip. When we have lost the ability to have pleasure for things that usually give us pleasure, I think that's a real strong indicator that we're heading down the slope. Lack of an ability to enjoy life, enjoy partnerships, enjoy the people that we're with, enjoy food, or the things that are a good book, are real key indicators to me of when things are getting more difficult for us. And then I think it's obviously all of us would like to address problems sooner rather than later.
Okay, any other questions, comments for Judy? So a question came in, Judy, could you talk a little bit about dealing with being triggered by the anxiety of the situation?
Well, I think that if we're talking about what's going on now with the pandemic, certainly when I mentioned, if the TV is too much for you, that we have to be able to back away from that. That if all we're doing is watching bad news, that's upsetting us, we need to be able to pull away. Anxiety is obviously gonna increase at a time when things are not only anxious for us. The biggest anxiety is we don't know when the end of this is, and we don't know everything that it entails. So the great unknown becomes more anxiety provoking. I'm gonna go back to the things that I said a little bit earlier, and that is focus on the things you have control over. Find something that gives you meaning and pleasure every day. Does that mean if you're up for 18 hours that you're going to have 18 hours of fun? No, but you need to have something that you look forward to, not necessarily anything big, but whether it is your favorite coffee, whether it is clean sheets on your pillow, on your bed, whatever those things are that you really enjoy, be sure that that's a part of your daily living and that you can reflect on that and really make it a key piece of what you're doing. Anxiety is going to be with us right now. The question is, are we going to let it overwhelm us, or are we going to put it in a place where it's here, but it's not consuming us? So I think we have to recognize that anxiety is here, but that it's not going to be pervasive. Does that make sense?
Yes, thank you.
Uh-huh.
Other questions people have for Judy? Okay, Judy, thank you very much. A couple things I want to touch on that Judy said. We talked about distancing without isolation, and Judy mentioned the need to move and the need to breathe and the need to relax. And so I do want to make sure everybody knows that the Memphis Jewish Community Center is doing a host of online, virtual, live, and pre-recorded programs that can all be accessed through the JCC website at www.jccmemphis.org. There are daily fitness classes, so not only can you move, but you can join our classes live and actually have that opportunity to interact with other people and with a live instructor. I would like to remind everybody that tomorrow night at 7 o'clock, FJFS, in partnership with the MJCC's Early Childhood Center and Camp and Youth Department, will be presenting a program on how to talk to your children about the coronavirus, featuring Vanessa Akeradolu, a licensed social worker and licensed school social worker who serves as FJFS's school counselor. Also, this coming Monday, March 23rd at 7 p.m., FJFS will be presenting a program on managing stress and anxiety during the stressful time, featuring FJFS's program coordinator and therapist, Rashki Osina, who is a licensed clinical social worker. Please join us for both of these programs. Have a good night, stay safe, and please make sure to stay connected with us here at the MJCC. Thank you.
Thank you, Larry. Bye-bye.